I think at this point we all know the story of both games, heroic tales about the feats and sacrifices of seemingly insignificant bugs. But what if it was different? What if there were changes and the story no longer goes the way it is intended? Well, let's check out one such scenario. For a little knight, not much changes. They go through Hallownest and take the place of the Hollow Knight, as unfortunately in this version of the story an important character no longer pushes the knight in the direction of change. Here Hornet is no longer the princess raised by the three queens. Here I had to go into the dream earlier than expected, and that led to Hornet being raised on the White Palace grounds. Surrounded by such wealth and treated like a true princess by the retainers of the Pale King, it changed her. She would see wealth as power, and the more the better, to a point where she doesn't care about anything else. When the time came for the White Palace to go into the dream as a last resort, Hornet found herself in the treasury. A place she frequented often, thinking about the day when everything there would be her own. And that was the day. The treasury and thus Hornet were left behind when the palace had disappeared. Not being sure what to do, Hornet gathered all the geo available there and decided to leave, as she thought the money could buy anything she wanted. But she wouldn't get too far, as the Citadel bugs would still come for her, and Hornet would be captured. The Citadel bugs would confiscate the geo, but not because they had to, but because of greed. They knew they could rip off individuals going towards Hallownest to get more rosaries, and that's what they did until all the geo reserves were turned into rosaries. Once at the outskirts of Farloom, the cage in which Hornet is once again got destroyed and she falls into the chasm below. And that's where this version of Farloom's story starts, where other than a needle falling beside Hornet, it was a Rosary Cannon from the Citadel and a loss of rosaries. I hope you guys liked the small story segment at the start of this video. While brainstorming for this challenge, I was thinking, how could I make this better, more entertaining? Especially since I'm starting a run that would need some context when you think about it. Thus I decided to do these small story segments and maybe weave more throughout this and even future challenge runs. Speaking of challenge, what is this video's theme? What is this video's challenge? Initially, I wanted to play through by giving myself the Rosary Cannon. That would also require a lot of rosaries to be in Hornet's possession, and thus it turned into a millionaire Hornet run where she uses her inheritance money to buy whatever she wants. What are the rules? Well, the only rule is that I'm allowed to only use items that can be purchased with rosaries, with a couple of exceptions. Those exceptions being some items that would be picked up from the ground by our dear opportunistic Hornet. Okay, these exceptions are here mainly as I wanted this to be a fun run for myself. Sure, I could go and do it with 5 masks and only 2 memory lockets, but after doing a bunch of Steel Soul attempts, I really needed a break, so I decided to do this run while being chill about bending the rules a bit more. Oh, also because of the way Silksong is, when it comes to thematic challenge runs, most of these runs will start with the item necessary or as close to having it as possible. Obviously, I would have to go through a lot more than half of the game to get just the Rosary Cannon, even with skips, and I don't really want to do major glitches, because there are some that would get me to possibly even the Rosary Cannon itself, but yeah. Before I get into the meat of this video, even though the intro already took a while, if you do enjoy this video and my content, why not leave a like, comment, or subscribe to my channel? Anything helps in today's algorithm run economy. So just like in any run, I start at the bottom of Moss Grotto and have to make my way out. I do take on the local wildlife to check out my damage and to get used to how the cannon works, as it will be quite important later to know that. Then I make it to the first boss of the game, and technically the first roadblock. So while I have a ton of rosaries, I don't have access to the most important thing when it comes to getting more of them inside the cannon, which is a bench. It would be nice to have a bench near you at all times, but yeah, no. So how do I deal with this? By installing a mod. Initially I installed one that said I would be able to reload using rosary strings, which would limit me to how many reloads I could carry and how much I could shoot, but that requires the Architect Crescent, and I didn't want to give it to myself at the very beginning. So that's it, run over? Well, looking at the time left in the video, not really. I did have another mod loaded because I needed a way to get the Rosary Cannon on from the start of the game, and from the way it works, which I guess is it simulates the part of the code which thinks you are on a bench, it allows me to reload the cannon. Thus I can shoot all the rosaries I want. There's also a bad side effect to this that I will be talking about later. So the Moss Mother fight was not that bad. The biggest problem being the fact I had to stand still in order to shoot at her. Boulders were easy to dodge and the boss grubs would just line up for me. Standing still to shoot will really be the biggest problem for a lot of future boss fights, as they are quite fast and agile. Or you just don't have a straight line of sight. You might have seen me open the tool menu in this fight. Well, I will not have that appear anymore by editing it out. It was annoying for me to deal with, and I feel like it would be even more annoying watching it happen again and again during this video. Once out of the chapel, I went towards Bone Bottom, and most importantly, I got the first shopkeeper. Oh, a new face. Would you like to see my wares? I have money. Alright. If I have money, it means I am interested in wares, especially expensive ones. Oh, is that so? Well, I have a lot of expensive things here, especially compared to what you would usually find. But if you want the truly expensive items, you will surely need to go upwards towards the Gilded Citadel. Ooh, a citadel made of gold. Don't mind if I do. Then, with nothing left to do in Bone Bottom, I went through the Marrow and up towards the first spell. Unfortunately, the Silk Spear is needed to free up the Bell Beast. I know you can skip that fight, but I think that this Hornet would find a way to make some profit out of having something like this. Plus, it's like owning a car technically, which is something quite expensive. On the way, I met up with Chakra and cleared out her inventory, went onwards through Moss Home, got to the Silk Spear, and then headed for the next boss fight. The Bell Beast was actually easier than Moss Mother in my opinion, a lot more time to actually shoot at it since it does stay in place for a bit during both attacks in phase 1. The Bell attack also lasts for a bit, so I got a decent amount of damage there too. The phase transition, like in a normal fight, was where I could deal the most damage. The only different thing from the classic fight is that I couldn't pogo off of her when she would dash across the arena, so that made the jumps a bit scary. Oh, also you can pet the beast with the Rosary Cannon, which is quite an interesting thing I found out. Huh, you're actually kind of cute. I wonder what you can do exactly. Oh my god, this is actually fun! After finishing the rest of the Marrow, I made it into the Deep Docks where I, met Chakra for the first time? And then met Chakra for the first time, and then met... I'm not really sure which mod does this, as I don't have many, but yeah. This meeting dialogue will play every single time I meet with Chakra, unless she's sitting down. Quite annoying. Anyway, the Deep Docks pretty much brings both the first major ability and also the first major hurdle. The Ant Arena wasn't too bad, even though I did die once, mainly because I was still not used to the cannon playstyle here. With that out of the way, it was time to get Swift Step. This will help a lot in both movement but also combat, as a dash will allow me to dodge a lot of enemy attacks. Speaking of enemy attacks, now for the first hurdle of this run, which was mainly won because of the way I had to play. The Deep Docks Arena has some interesting enemies. The Bellheads I can deal with easily enough, and the ones with shields are doable by waiting and jumping over them. The problem were the flying Bellheads. Those guys are so hard to get a hit on because of how the Rosary Cannon works. I could deal with previous flying enemies by getting them in my shooting line, as the cannon can only shoot straight to your right or left. But these guys will always be above you at an angle. Here is where I learned the two strategies for flying enemies. You either jump and start shooting near the apex of said jump, so if the enemy is still in line with you it gets hit, or you just start spamming left and right while shooting on the ground. Why does that work? Well, it's because when the Rosary Cannon changes directions, it flips it 180 degrees, and while doing that, it will shoot some rosaries upwards at different angles, thus sometimes shooting the flying enemies. Neither of these two are fun to do as they have a lot of RNG to them, but I was able to get through the arena in the end. Right after this arena is another merchant with a couple items I could get, including the first crafting kit, which does increase my Rosary Cannon damage. And just after that you have the Lace fight. It is quite funny that if you shoot her while not engaged in combat, she will deflect all of your rosaries.
Why won't you die? Nanomachines, son. They harden in response to physical trauma.
The fight took less than 45 seconds. I guess the DPS of the Rosary Cannon is quite big when you already have one damage upgrade for it. I Either way, the Lace One fight generally is quite easy as her moves are not the hardest to dodge. Just jump over her and as you land, start firing the rosaries. She will be defeated in no time. Garfield's was quite straightforward, mainly because there aren't any important fights until the 4th chorus. Though before that, let's take on the quest given by the seamstress because there is an interesting thing with the spines. You want to go further towards that citadel, my dear? Yes, indeed. Do you know of a way to go up this dreadful place? I don't want to get my cloak dirty. Oh, I do indeed, but you have to procure me some materials first. Do I really have to work? Now of all times. Well, do you want to go up or not? So, because I always use my nail, and the unupgraded one at that, I never realized that the Hokers shot the spines no matter how much damage they take during the hit. Because the Rosary Cannon deals quite the low damage number, the Hokers can give more than 3 rounds of spines. With a bit of luck, you can actually get all the spines in like 1 or 2 Hokers. Unfortunately for me, finishing up the quest leads to the 4th chorus. If you haven't realized yet, this guy is a huge pain. There's one big floating reason as to why. This boss only has 1 hurt box. Unless you hit its head, it takes no damage. Well, you can't even hit other body parts. Does he ever get low enough to shoot consistently? No. Can I shoot the explosives above it to defeat it early? No. For some reason, when it comes to those explosives, I believe they are too far away off screen, so the Rosary Cannon cannot trigger them. Thus, I am stuck in a cycle of dodging and then spray and pray, baby. It took me around 7 minutes of straight up shooting blindly. Well, almost 7 minutes. It seems that whenever changing directions, the shots sent above are not as random as I thought. It seems like there is a slight pattern and you can use that here. By sitting slightly to the side of the head, you can get quite a few shots in consistently. It still took a long time, but to be fair, since the boss moves are quite easy to dodge and the telegraph is huge, it was not that bad. Now I'm able to go further up in the kingdom, but first, a quick visit to everyone's favorite merchant, Mort. I did get the weighted bell, which would help since it gives more invincibility frames. I obviously bought everything else he had as well. I do quite enjoy this little contraption you have here for the door. Oh, a fellow entrepreneur, I guess? You could say that. Did you ever think of covering up the mechanism? It seems like quite the weak spot for your venture here if anyone would be to hit it. Oh, I never thought of that. You're right, they could break it. I'll take care of that soon. Making it into Greymore was not a good thing as I now had to deal with the crawls. Not only did they make me suffer for quite some time in Steel Soul, they are now here to make me suffer some more. Okay, it was not as bad as it could have been. The main problem being the fact that most of the Crow enemies could fly. The pin and throwing knife ones were easier to deal after they land because I could just hold down the shoot button, but the problem is they would usually be paired with the small crawls that charge you. This is where timing is very important. Either you employ one of the 2 strategies I mentioned earlier, or you could sit on the ground, shoot as they charge at you, and then jump out of the way at last second. Either way, the arena was done, and I was able to ring another bell. I guess now you know which route to Act 2 I will take. Another problem appeared here, which is with how the reload works for the cannon. As I mentioned in the starting part of the run, the reload seems to work by simulating sitting on a bench, which lets me put rosaries in the cannon. Well, during the Crow Arena, I realized that this effect also replenishes my used tools, just like sitting at a bench would do. That is a problem as I don't want to have infinite tools. Because of that, I have decided to just use the tools as little as possible, and whenever I do, I just use the amount I have at that moment. So if I have 5 stink shards total, I will only use 5 during the fight, even if I accidentally replenish them. After dealing with the crawls, I went to the left to get into Bellheart, with a quick detour to pick up the quest from New, as that will give me a tool upgrade later on. It is one of the few quests I will be doing before Act 3, as it will reward me with an amazing upgrade once I have all the entries in the journal. Getting through the rest of Greymore was quite uneventful. The arena after halfway home was not hard as the enemies are grounded and I can just spam the cannon into them. The road to Morrowind was also just a bit of platforming and enemies I could just run past, so let's get to the fight itself. Morrowind was actually not that bad, even though I was left on 1 HP afterwards. I used my Sting Shard charges early on to deal some initial damage, and to make sure I don't forget I already used them. After that, it was a matter of jumping and shooting a couple bullets whenever I had the possibility. With Morwing being quite close to the ground, this strategy worked wonders. Not just that, but some of its moves brought it even closer to the ground so I could get more damage in. With how other bosses and enemies that fly at you went, I'm genuinely surprised I didn't get hit by the dash attack Morwing does. It's now time to free Bellheart. Gelwood was quite interesting as there are a lot of flying enemies around with the fisher bugs and all the flowers. Well, thankfully there are not that many gauntlets and the one there is quite easy. Now I could have done the skip to get Cling Grip before fighting Sister Splinter, since technically I am not killing the flower with my nail, but I wanted to see how the fight with the boss would go using the Rosary Cannon, as that is pretty much the goal of this challenge, to have fun. The fight was quite fun, very similar to a normal fight. The boss having such a massive hitbox was really helpful as I was able to sit on the ground and change shooting directions, which would lead to a bunch of rosaries hitting the boss, unlike the fourth chorus where the head was too small to get a good amount of hits in. The only problem I could see would be the summoned ads, but there is an easy fix to that. Just run to the other side of the room from where they are spawning, as the bugs will get close to the ground while trying to float towards you. As for the spikes that fill the arena, thankfully those can be removed using the Rosary Cannon, but then again, it's an obstacle rather than an enemy, so I could just use my needle if needed. And thus, Cling Grip was acquired. The Widow fight was fast. Like, I really didn't think that Widow would take so little time to go down. I guess the DPS of the Rosary Cannon on a target that spends most of its time sitting still is quite high. It reminded me of how fast Lace went down. I hope Lace 2 goes the same way. Well, Needlein is now in my hands, and Bellheart has been freed. I also bought everything that I could from the shop. Why are you so poor? Where are all your items? And then I accepted my missing courier wish, as that will have the shop get more wares. I want to spend as much money as possible. Went real quick to finish the wish and then back to buy some more. Ah, much better now. And then I accepted the Crowbug cleaning, which I proceeded to also finish as soon as possible. The reason I did this is to get the crafting kit to upgrade the damage of my tools once again, and thus the damage of the Rosary Cannon. The more damage I can deal, the better it will be for me. The thing with a run like this, where you just use specific weapons but still get all the abilities, pretty much makes areas between bosses quite boring, because that is how Blasted Steps was. The fact that I can just run away from most encounters makes traversing areas fast. Well, with a quick intermission to get the magnetite dice, as I would count me using rosaries to bet for it as spending them, and thus counting for usage during the run. I'm still unsure about the timing for the dice throw, but somehow I managed to get it a lot. Thankfully, I don't have to wait until Act 2 to get them. Yeah, remember what I said about stationary targets? Last Judge is just as easy as Widow. Well, I was really close to dying when it did the fire spin desperation phase, but there was enough space there to not get hit. I think the most interesting part was whenever it was spinning the sensor, it would deflect some of my rosaries. An interesting mechanic, and it kinda makes sense since the rotating sensor could hit incoming tools. But yeah, Last Judge was easy and I was able to interact too, and the area I hate the most at this point, the Underworks. You don't want to know how many Steel Soul runs I lost to this area. Oh god. One good part is that I was able to use the benches in the area freely with the rosaries I had, and I also didn't need to get anything specific here, so I could just run through there as fast as I could. Ooh, paying for sitting down. Now I can see how the Citadel got so rich. If only we had something like this back home, I would have even more money now. Making into the Citadel proper, there are only two enemies that could really do some damage, and they are the Reed and the Bellbearer. Flying enemies are always the worst, especially when some of them have parries. Then again, I have the perfect strategy. Just run. Getting to what would soon be called Songclave, I cleared the silk and rung the bell, after which I met this weird old dude. Why are you here, young bug?
Money!
Huh?
I like money!
Good answer. Next up was the Mecha Doomed Yaoi, which actually took a couple tries. Yes, the one I focused does spend a good amount of time on the ground getting shot, but the problem is I'm fighting two enemies, so I have to focus on seeing where both bosses will end up. That kinda threw me off, as I also have to sit still to shoot and have a bit of an animation whenever I stop to dodge. After getting the rhythm of the three phases down and not taking too many hits, I was able to take down the Cogwork Dancers and access the main objective of Act 2, getting the melodies. Well, before doing that, I wanted to do a bit of shopping as bosses are getting more and more annoying as I progress, and next is one I didn't think would take me that long. What do I want to buy? The Fractured Mask, as it will allow me to take one extra hit. The road there wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I did die once in the ant arena, but when I went back, I managed to get through. The flying enemies there were the worst part, but thankfully they do ground pounds from time to time, which gave me plenty of time to shoot them. The bad part in all of this is I forgot that the merchant who sells the Fractured Mask dies when you beat the Clockwork Dancers. Well, what I did is I picked it up and then just shot out the equivalent amount of rosaries using the cannon. I also did that for the Curve Claw, which is found in a room above the one with the merchant after their death. With the mask on my face, it was time to face Trobio. And during the first of many attempts is where I learned something else that made the challenge actually harder. Remember how opening and reloading the Rosary Cannon also replenishes my tools? Well, it's the same for the Fractured Mask. Yeah, I will not be using it anymore. I could have still used it and just letting myself die whenever I had the mask destroyed again, but I feel like this one is way more out of my control than using a specific amount of tools during the fight. The Trobio fight itself was something else. The positioning needed to actually deal damage and not take it myself was quite tight, as I can't pogo off of him when he does the tornado attack, and sitting to its sides is a lot more dangerous. He's also a slippery little bastard and always hides below the arena. After a bunch of attempts and finally understanding where to position during Trobio's attacks, I managed to defeat him and make it to the next upgrade I needed to get in order to find the melodies. Clawline is a pretty cool upgrade as it can also be used for combat. I wonder how a run using only it would be. After getting it and a small parkour area, I made it to the Toft Architect where I could get another tool damage upgrade. I'm almost at max damage, but I need a fade down cloak for the final one. As for more purchases from the Architect, well, I need to own more tools for that. With Trobio beaten and Clawline obtained, I was able to make it to the first of 3 melodies. I got a cylinder and went to Vaultkeeper Cardinius to listen to it and have Hornet learn it. Then it was time to find Jubilana within the Citadel so she can move to Songclave, as she is another shopkeeper, so another bug that sells things for Hornet to buy using her massive reserves. Ah, miss, thank you for saving me earlier. Oh yeah, right, now sell me stuff. Oh, but I wanted to give you this as a reward. I have so much money I could pull a Scrooge McDuck. I don't need free things. To get to the other melodies and finish the game, I need one more ability, Fade Down Cloak. So here is the main issue with this area. The parkour is not that bad after I had to do it a bunch of times in previous playthroughs. The issue is that the bugs used to clawline and get through certain parts of the area die whenever you clawline them. Now, here's the thing. In my opinion, when it comes to enemies that are specifically used as obstacles or for parkour, enemies which respawn a few seconds later, I don't think they should count against the challenge run. Again, this run I'm doing is more for fun, so the rules are more broad and can be bent for that reason, but even in a run that I would take more serious, I wouldn't count this against it, especially if there's no other way around. Big Bird has been met and Fade Down Cloak has been obtained. With all abilities on hand, I can now finish the game. Thus I went on and did Cogwork Core. It is pretty much just a long platforming challenge with a puzzle at the end where the solution is always the same. Nothing too hard. Now for the last melody I have to go through High Holes and the Forum Arena. But first a long detour as I need to do some shopping. So for the Forum Arena I want a few specific things. First is a final tool damage upgrade which I can get from Grindel alongside a couple other things I can buy. Next is the Architect Crest. Now I have done a bunch of research and I pretty much just can't get enough tools for the key by just getting purchasable tools. They're just not enough for it since I want to buy and use everything that can be bought, which includes the crest as the key is purchasable. So what I have decided to do is to just collect a bunch of tools that I will never use, and when I have enough I can just get the key and crest. So the Wild Goose Chase started by getting a couple more craft metal pieces to use in getting the tools from the 12th Architect themselves, as they are needed alongside the rosaries. Then a few other random tools that were as easy to get as possible. And one of the most important ones, the Plasmium File. So you might be asking, how come you can use the file? It was not purchased. Well, I wanted to use it since having Architect's Crest allows me to go overdose mode and, well, the Hornet being rich and getting something that could be considered as drugs. Okay, you know what, I will add like 2,000 more rosaries to the final count as I didn't think about that initially. After getting the Architect Crest and trying to do the overdose mode, I realized something. I don't have enough charges in the Plasmium file to actually hit the required number of masks. I need one more pouch upgrade. Here is where the wish from New comes into play. By getting the 100 enemy entries, I will be able to get the pouch upgrade I need. Thus I went on through Sinner's Road and then Bile Water to get the enemies I had left to 100. I also did Bile Water as I will need to get through parts of it whenever I do Act 3. Okay, now for real, it's time to beat the game. I still need the High Halls Melody, so that's where I'm going. Quick parkour sections through it as I was able to just ignore the enemies. Before getting down all the way to the arena, I did enter the section where you can get rid of the Claw Maidens, as I really don't want to deal with erratic flying enemies that can steal my limited amount of soul. Then I got the bench and started getting the overdose mode prepared. In the Forum Arena, the grounded enemies were easily taken care of by, well, shooting them. Now you might expect me to complain about the flying enemies. Well, while I could do that, I won't, as the 12th Architect had a secret weapon that I could buy, the Sawtooth Circlet. In my initial playthrough I actually dismissed this tool as it didn't seem to be that good, but oh god, the amount of damage it deals with all tool upgrades is insane for what kind of tool it is. So yeah, ground enemies were decimated by the rosaries I shot, while the flying enemies got the White Palace treatment. The mid-gauntlet mini-boss was easily dealt with as it was a ground-based enemy. Then came the final wave. This one was a lot harder as there are two of that one mini-boss and they hit like a truck. This is exactly why I wanted to get the Plasmium overdose going. I could just sit in one of the top corners and wait there to heal up. After doing some tactical retreats and getting damage in whenever I could, I did take down the arena on the first try. I genuinely didn't think I could do it this fast, but these tools are really powerful. With all the melodies learned, I'm now able to go to the top of the Citadel and take on Lace and Grandmother Silk. Oh mighty trio, I have gotten the melodies and passed your trial. Now let me in to join the rich. Lowly bug, you have spent your rosaries without thinking and still are one of the richest bugs around. You may pass and attempt to join them. The Lace fight was pretty much the same as the first one. To be honest, while Lace 2 is harder since most moves deal 2 damage, said moves are quite similar if not the same as the first fight. There were some close calls as I got as low as 2 masks, but just hanging around and focusing on dodging would allow me to heal enough to not be in lethal range. A good thing about doing challenge runs is that I get practice in for some of these bosses as there isn't a Goldhome equivalent yet. After Lace there is the Terminus and Cradle bit with some parkour and a bench closer to Grandmother Silk. I did have to redo the Plasmium overdose as I wanted to have a closer bench and sitting on a bench takes away the effect. The first 2 phases of the Grandmother Silk fight went on quite smoothly. The best part of this fight is that the boss sits quite low on the screen and whenever I would jump to dodge the incoming attacks, I could shoot a bunch of bullets into her. This went on for a while until in the later phases I had a few times where I got low enough to be lethal. Again, I kept my cool and just focused on dodging until I had enough health to live a few more hits. I feel like these last 2 fights were generally way less tense and quite anticlimactic. Like sure, I could die at any point as me shooting the cannon holds me in place, but compared to something like 4 of Chorus or Moss Mother, these fights were less of an issue. I think it's because I had a lot more opportunities to shoot at Grandmother Silk compared to the other bosses, alongside also having an easy to use damaging tool with the Sawtooth Circlet. Then again, I tried to not use it for Grandmother Silk as I also plan on doing a Sawtooth Circlet only run later. What happened? I thought I won the trial. They don't care about how much money you have and how hard you try. Only bugs they want to get in. Okay, now I'm mad. I wish I could take them down. I want my place in the Golden Citadel. You know what? I think I might have a way for you to get revenge and be the one at the top. Oh really? And you're not trying to trick me like they did? No, of course not. Why would I do such a thing? Okay, I'm all ears then. What do I need to do? So that's it. I managed to beat the game with the Rosary Cannon and a couple other tools that were also purchased with rosaries. That's why I called it Capitalism only instead of Rosary Cannon only. The run itself actually took way less than I thought. A lot of the people I have seen online talk about the Rosary Cannon as if it's the worst thing out there. And it actually is. The only reason I made it look somewhat good is because I gave myself infinite ammo pretty much. Remember that even with the pouch upgrades you can only hold up to 80 rosaries and you cannot reload it with Architect's Crest. So that's it. Very low amount of damage for what it can do. How many rosaries did I use by the end of Act 2 and the normal ending? 31,034 rosaries. But also add the 2,000 I talked about with the platinum file, so a bit over 33,000. There's another thing. I tried to avoid rosaries as much as possible, so I could get as accurate of a number as I could, but it's quite hard to avoid them, especially in the latter half of the game. And also, that was not the goal here, so I didn't really care too much. It is possible I could add another 1,000 or 2 to the final number, but who knows. Personally, I had fun with this run. I got to use some tools I didn't during my initial playthrough, and I actually saw the potential of the Salted Circlet. I'm quite excited to get to do some more Silksong runs, and I want to get to them quite soon. As for doing Act 3 of this run, well, that will come at some point in the future, so if you're interested in it, why not subscribe so you don't miss it? Well, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.